Chapter 1, Extreme Counterattack. The gun in front of me is a Glock 17, recognizable at a glance. The highlights also reveal that this gun is the 4th generation of Glock 17. There are 5 generations of Glock 17. The 1st and 2nd generations are not significantly different. The 3rd generation adds a tactical rail to the front of the slide, and the 4th generation adds markings to the slide. The 5th generation eliminates the grip finger grooves. These are the more obvious external changes of the Glock 17 handgun. But I feel ashamed to say that even with a gun pointed at my head, I can only recognize the Gen 4 engraved on the slide to confirm that this gun is the 4th generation of Glock. What kind of person can identify the model of the gun pointing at them, even with a gun pointed at their head? People like me, Gao Guang. Not to mention having a gun pointed at my head, even if I get shot. As long as I'm not dead, I have to figure out whether I was hit by a 9mm parabellum bullet or a .45 ACP bullet. As a military fan who has no gun but has a gun in his heart, being able to identify the model of the gun is the limit I can achieve at this moment. With my hands tied behind my back, my mouth taped, and a gun pointing at my forehead, I was forced to kneel on the ground. At this moment, I feel nothing but regret and fear. I regret that I shouldn't have come to Mexico, let alone to Tijuana, otherwise I wouldn't have been kidnapped. I am afraid that if I am shot dead here, even my body will not be left, and no one will even know that I have been killed. After forcing Gao Guang to kneel with a gun, seeing that he was motionless and well-behaved, the kidnapper put away his gun and looked at the only person sitting in the room and said, "Boss, we found him in the city. He just got off a taxi, and then I tied him up and brought him here." The kidnapper brought a small bag to the boss. Inside the bag were Gao Guang's passport, cell phone, airplane ticket, and a wallet. The boss sat in a white plastic chair, wearing Air Force Ones on his feet, jeans on his lower body, a light gray linen suit on his upper body, a light pink shirt under the suit, his hair neatly combed, a carefully groomed mustache on his mouth, and a strong perfume on his body. From the outside, the leader of the kidnappers looks like a trendy and stylish man, and he doesn't seem very fierce. But there is another person behind the kidnapper boss who looks very fierce. He seems to be a bodyguard, and the bodyguard is holding a submachine gun, which he never puts down. As a matter of faith, Gao Guang couldn't help but identify the submachine gun again, confirming that it was an MP7. Gao Guang didn't dare to look at the kidnapper boss too much, but the kidnapper boss carefully examined Gao Guang for a few moments. Then he opened the small bag, rummaged through it a bit, and took out Gao Guang's passport from the compartment specifically for holding documents. Without even opening the passport, the boss shook his head just by looking at the cover. When he flipped through the passport, carefully looked through the visas, he immediately threw the passport onto the round table with disgust. "He's a Chinese person. You idiots kidnapped a Chinese person." The kidnapper who brought Gao Guang here seemed puzzled and said, "So what if he's Chinese? What's wrong with that?" Because if a Chinese person is kidnapped, the Chinese Consulate General in Tijuana will contact the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs will contact the Tijuana Police Department. The police department will contact me to ask for the person, and then I won't be able to get the money and it will be troublesome. Do you understand now? After hearing the boss's words, the kidnapper fell silent for a moment. Then he pointed to Gao Guang's small bag and said, "There's his bank card inside. Ask for the PIN of the bank card and withdraw all the money in his card." The boss shrugged and said, "This guy is obviously a poor wretch. There won't be much money in his bank card. It's not worth going to the ATM to withdraw money and causing unnecessary trouble." The kidnapper looked at Gao Guang with suspicion and said, "Is he a poor wretch?" The boss pointed at Gao Guang and said, "His jacket, his t-shirt, his pants, and his shoes. Although I don't know the brand, I can tell from the material and workmanship that they are all cheap." The total value of his whole outfit will definitely not exceed $100. After talking about Gao Guang's outfit, the boss took out Gao Guang's broken cell phone from the small bag and waved it at the others, saying with disdain, "A cell phone brand I don't recognize. No matter what brand it is, a young man using a broken screen phone will never be a rich person." After throwing the phone on the table, the boss said with a dissatisfied expression, "You still need to learn how to distinguish rich people, so that you won't kidnap foreign poor wretches who won't bring much profit and will only cause trouble." At this moment, Gao Guang felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps these kidnappers would let him go because he was too poor and would only cause trouble without much ransom. However, the kidnapper boss said in a casual tone, "Since he's not worth asking for a ransom, and letting him go will also cause trouble, just kill him." Kill him? Gao Guang, who had been motionless, suddenly moved. He hadn't dared to show any sign of abnormality before, but now he just wanted these kidnappers to know that he could speak Spanish, so that he could say a few words and save his life by paying a ransom. So he started struggling and making a muffled sound in his mouth. Seeing Gao Guang's reaction, the boss looked surprised and said, "You can understand Spanish?" Gao Guang nodded repeatedly to prove that he could indeed understand Spanish. He felt that this way, he could be someone they could communicate with, and at least let these kidnappers ask how much money they could squeeze out of him before deciding whether to kill him. However, these kidnappers were truly inhumane and had no patience. They were not interested in listening to Gao Guang speak. The boss waved his hand casually and said in a light tone, "If you can speak Spanish, then you have to die even more. Kill him!" The kidnapper next to Gao Guang immediately took out his gun from his waist and pointed it at his head again. "What are you doing? Do you want to make this place covered in blood? Strangle him? No. Take him outside to finish him off, so he won't wet himself." Hearing the boss's words, Gao Guang fell into complete despair. In despair, Gao Guang no longer felt afraid or regretted. He was now extremely angry. But struggling uselessly was meaningless. At this moment, although Gao Guang was extremely angry, he was also extremely calm, and his brain was spinning rapidly. He lowered his head within despair, obediently stood up with the help of two kidnappers. Gao Guang didn't struggle or resist, which saved the kidnappers a lot of trouble. So the kidnappers didn't drag him out, they just grabbed his arms and walked out of the door. Not being dragged or pulled meant that he could walk on his own feet, and having his own feet meant having a foundation. Only with a foundation under his feet could he do something. With his head lowered, Gao Guang could see the feet of the two kidnappers, so he could distinguish their positions and distances. "Let's do it here," one of the kidnappers said, and both of them stopped at the same time, releasing their grip. There was no more time to waste. At the moment the kidnapper stopped, Gao Guang suddenly lowered his body, used his left foot as the axis, and swept his right leg along the ground, delivering a heavy roundhouse kick. He hadn't expected to escape, but even if he was going to die, Gao Guang had to give the kidnappers a hard hit first. Even if he couldn't kill them with his kick, he had to make them feel the pain. Even if he missed, he had to give them a fright. The martial arts he had practiced since childhood finally came in handy today. This kick did not miss its target. The kidnapper beside Gao Guang had already raised his gun, but was caught off guard by Gao Guang's heavy sweep to his ankle, and then fell heavily to one side. Gao Guang leaped up again and delivered a clean and neat aerial spinning kick, which hit the neck of the other kidnapper beside him with great force. It was Gao Guang's well-practiced routine to follow a sweeping leg with a spinning kick. Who says martial arts routines are useless? Even if martial arts routines can't be performed on the ring or in actual combat, and have become mere performance items, Gao Guang, who had practiced routines since childhood, was at least physically agile and quick-witted. Even with his hands tied behind his back, he could knock down two kidnappers with a sweeping leg and a spinning kick. However, Gao Guang also lost his balance with his hands tied and fell to the ground. Looking at the situation now, it seemed that the practicality of martial arts routines was indeed lacking. Although both kidnappers were knocked down, the one who was kicked in the ankle only fell to the ground, and the one who was kicked in the neck did not lose his ability to move. Moreover, lying on the ground did not prevent them from shooting. Gao Guang immediately adjusted his posture and tried to get up. At this moment, the kidnapper who was knocked down by the sweeping leg raised his gun towards him. Without time to hesitate, Gao Guang kicked hard, but the kidnapper was out of range of his feet, and he missed with his full force. Before he could have any thoughts, Gao Guang knew he was going to die in the instant he missed. The gun went off, and Gao Guang unconsciously ducked his head, but he was surprised to see a spray of blood bursting from the head of the kidnapper who was aiming at him. The kidnapper's hand fell limply to the ground, followed by a booted foot stepping past Gao Guang's vision. In Gao Guang's extremely surprised and delighted eyes, a figure dressed in black with a rifle in his hand flashed past him.